6 miles northeast of Key Largo, Florida, there's a 9-foot bronze statue beneath the surface at the Pennycamp Coral Reef State Park. This iconic statue is one of the most famous underwater sites in the world and has been visited by millions of snorkelers and scuba divers. It's known as Christ of the Abyss or Christ of the Deep and features outstretched arms facing upwards. But how did it get there? Who made it and why? The answers may surprise you. This is the legend of the statue.
Thanks to a grant from Department of Veterans Affairs, I ended up at Hines VA Hospital. They had a brand new blind center. I was there to teach a bunch of blind veterans how to scuba dive. I have all this gear, I'm setting it up, I'm having them feel it because they're blind, right? So they got to tactily feel everything. This one guy, Gabe Spataro, I start talking about the gear. He goes, oh yeah, I know that. I go, what do you mean you know that? He says, well, I started diving in the 50s. I go, really? I said, why am I here getting you certified? And he said, we didn't need certifications back then. We just had friends with tanks and stuff. I go, that's bootleg diving.
When you go back to the early days of scuba diving, say the 50s, it was pretty much rough and tumble. So it was very macho, it was military based. The equipment was rudimentary. First thing people bought was a knife or something like that. So the attitude was more, the sea is hostile, I'm fit, macho, you can't do what I do because I'm special. That kind of a mentality.
He starts bringing in these old photos of him like at Lake Geneva diving and stuff. And I'm like, I guess the dude really was a diver in the 50s and I'm just here to certify him now. Then he starts talking about the Christ statue, the Christ of the Deep in Key Largo. And he says, oh yeah, I brought that statue over from Italy. And I'm like, right. Sure you did. Sure you did. So he starts telling the story and I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then he starts bringing photos in. And it's of him in front of a big wooden crate with a 9-foot bronze Christ statue. And I'm like, oh my God, this dude brought it over. And then I start to get the story from him.
Let's go back to the birthplace of Italian scuba diving in the 1940s in the town of Genoa, Italy. People were developing new ways to explore the underwater world, and 2 brothers, Egidio and Nani Cressy, were constructing equipment that had become so popular that they founded the Cressy Company in 1946. These products would soon lead to what the world knows today as self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, or commonly called scuba diving. Then, in 1947, the community was shocked when local diver Dario Gonzatti died in a diving accident.
The Christ of the Abyss, close to Portofino, was placed there for a sad reason, actually, because it was positioned there to honor the death of Gonzatti, part of the Italian diving community of the 1940s. He was a close friend with Egidio Cressi and Duilio Marcante, and they were kind of a group of friends that often went diving together. When he died, Duilio and Egidio decided to build this Christ to honor the death of their friend.
Heartbroken by the loss, Duilio Marcante and the Cressis wanted to honor Gonzatti's legacy with a statue that would forever remind divers of the spirit of adventure. The famous sculptor Guido Gaetti took on the challenge. He envisioned a statue with outstretched arms as if to embrace all those who entered the sea. He gathered bronze donated from all over the world, old bells, Olympic and war medals, coins, ship fragments, and even propellers from U.S. submarines. The resulting statue weighed nearly 800 pounds. In 1954, it was placed on a concrete base and submerged near Portofino as a sign of peace and protection for those who live, work, and play in the water.
The Christ of the Abyss was positioned there as a sort of protector of all the divers in the world.
Il senso della statua è nata a protezione dei subacquei perché ovviamente con l'inizio dell'attività sono cominciati i primi incidenti. All'epoca il grosso dell'immersione si praticava con l'apparecchio d'ossigeno, quindi la possibilità di incidenti era elevatissima. Con l'inizio di queste problematiche e con tutta una serie di problemi un po' in tutta Italia, inserire questa statua che doveva essere un po' la protettrice di tutti i subacquei del Mediterraneo e che poi man mano questa figura si è allargata un po' in tutto il mondo. A quel punto, qualche anno dopo, nel 65, dietro la spinta di mio zio e di altri subacquei, si è deciso di creare una coppia al Cristo di Portofino e inviarla negli Stati Uniti, in Florida, in modo che l'immagine fosse gemella a protezione dei subacquei un po' in tutto il mondo.
In total, in the world, there are 3 Christs of the Abyss. One is in San Fruttuoso in Genova, one is in the Caribbean, and one is in Florida. And the one in Florida was totally donated by a Cressy company that would hopefully help to protect American divers, as the Crest of the Abyss in Portofino hopefully protects Italian divers.
After the first statue was placed in the Italian waters in 1957, a second statue was placed in Grenada in 1961 to commemorate those saved from an Italian ship which caught fire and sank in the St. George's Harbor. The third statue was commissioned by Cressy and donated to the Underwater Society of America. But the story of how it got to the United States starts in Chicago, Illinois in the 1940s.
Gabe's family owned an Italian restaurant that the community loved named Sparga's.
My dad was born in 1932 in Chicago. They had a family restaurant. Sparga's was the first pizzeria on the northwest side of Chicago. My grandpa started it off originally as a liquor store, and then it turned into a pizzeria, turned into a restaurant, and ultimately a full banquet facility. It was a place to get pizza, it was a place to celebrate birthdays, and it was a place where people held weddings. Organizations used the facility constantly for banquets. It was a place for family to work. My mom became a waitress there, and that's how she met my dad. All the dishes, all the food we had was Italian, but very Italian-American.
It was always a fun time at the restaurant. Everybody was like a family. Come and eat with us, come have a party with us, just entertaining was a big part of that.
By that time, the American public decided it understood pizza. Have you ever seen the photo of the Sparga's menu with the woman in front of the pizza oven? Well, that's my mother, Grace. I can remember my mother talking about a night where they made 500 pizzas in one night. And that was Sparga's.
No one really knew the role that Sparga's restaurant would play in the Christ statue coming to America.
Chicagoland is interesting because in many ways the story of Patty and other stories are centered there. There were a lot of people who converged into each other's lives either directly or indirectly. The founders of Patty met there, and that's where it was formed. Gabe, obviously with the family restaurant, was there. Of all places, Chicagoland was kind of an epicenter of what we know today as modern diving industry, really. Ralph Erickson and John Cronin became friends. One night, they were going to go to an instructor update. They drove 3 or 4 hours downstate. It was canceled. That got them really frustrated. So they drove back to Chicago, grabbed a libation, which was Johnny Walker Black. They liked Italian restaurants for sure. They were known for pizza joints and highbrow Italian restaurants. They decided they're going to form their own thing. And that thing became the Professional Association of Diving Instructors, PADI, and that was 1966. So the two of them together were serendipity. They finished the whole bottle that night, and that's how Patty was born. The legend is the reality.
My dad was in Sparga's, and he overheard some guys talking about going scuba or something. My dad didn't know what it was. Being the kind of guy he is, he was intrigued. He heard about going diving in the water. Just right up my dad's alley to want to get involved and want to go do it. so much so that it became a huge part of his life in his 20s and 30s.
Art Bala, who is a very good friend of my father's, he was talking to my dad about scuba diving and wanted to take Dad out. That was his first experience learning how to scuba dive, and I'm not as familiar with the equipment, but I know that that equipment must have been primitive back then compared to what they have now.
So we're in this class, and Gabe tells me he's been diving since the 50s. Well, I was certified in 76, so I know a little bit about the equipment. It was no gauges. We didn't know if we had air, we had air, or we didn't have air. And in Gabe's case, they were just wearing a tank on their back with straps and a weight belt, and they had one regulator. They didn't have two regulators, so if one of the buddies got in trouble, they were buddy breathing. The gear was very rudimentary, but it was functional. And he was very athletic when he was young, so he was able to figure all of it out without having a technical certification.
Well, my name is Gabe Spataro. I'm a Korean War veteran. I'm going to be 80 in June. I started scuba diving back in 1956. He put the fins on me, he put a weight belt on me, put the tank on my back, gave me a mask and a snorkel. He said, now Gabriel, there's only one thing I'm going to tell you to do. Don't stop breathing. I said, that's silly. Who wants to stop breathing underwater? So we go into the water and I can't breathe. And I come up, I said, Art, I can't breathe. He said, did you turn the tank on? Well, who knows about turning a tank on? So we went down, and it just was a whole new world. I mean, I was taken away with it. And all of a sudden, I couldn't breathe again. I went up, I said, Art, I can't breathe. He said, well, you've been down there a half hour. That started me on my scuba diving career. We joined the Underwater Society of America. The president of our Illinois consul was going to be president of the Underwater Society in 1962. So he said, Gabriel, as long as you're in the restaurant business and I'm going to be president, we're going to have a convention in Chicago. Why don't you be my chairman of my convention? I said, sure, there's no big deal. And then he mentioned that Italy was making a statue of Christ. They call it Christ of the Abyss in Italy. And they were going to donate that statue of Christ, it's a 9-foot bronze statue, to the American divers and those who work and live at the sea and die in the sea, you know. I said, gee, that sounds great. I said, what kind of budget you got? He said, there is no budget. So it just happened that I was making a trip to Europe going on a wine tour because I like to be a wine connoisseur. I ended up in Genoa. They showed me the statue and what they were doing, and they said they'll have it ready by, the middle of 1961. And I said, well, how are you going to get it to the States? He said, no, that's your business. You got to get it to the States. We're just making it and giving it to you. So I came home and I mentioned it to my pa. I said, geez, the Italians are making the statue of Christ, and we got to get it here to Chicago, but there's no money involved. And my pa said, well, we know somebody down at the Italian steamship line. Why don't you go down and visit with them and tell them what your problem is? So I made an appointment, and I went downtown and went into his office, and he said, Gabriel, sit down. Now just tell me, when do you want it? My father had already told him the whole story. So I said, no, the convention is in August of '62. As long as it's here by the 1st of August, we're set. He said, okay, it's all taken care of. So I walked out. Well, the beginning of August, I get a call. The statue's on its way down to Chicago. And I called the president and told a couple of people, and we went down to meet it at Navy Pier, and we took some publicity pictures, And this was, a 9-foot bronze statue. It was really overtaking. We kept it at Navy Pier until the convention. Well, I had to bring it into the hotel and up to the banquet floor where we're going to have the banquet. So I went to the manager and I said, I got this 9-foot bronze statue that I want to dedicate at the diving banquet, and we got to bring it up to the 2nd floor. He said, well, we're a union house. As long as you get the union to carry it, we're okay. So I went to the union, and the union said, well, geez, that statue, that size, it'd be about an $1,800 job. We'll only charge you $900. Okay. Well, I didn't pay anything to bring it and store it. I wasn't going to pay $900 just to take it up 2 floors. One of the guys in my group was a package handler for TWA, and he was union. So I went to him, I said, how about you be my union guy to take care of the statue? He said, sure. So we went into the manager's office, and I said, here's my union guy, he's gonna handle the statue. Fine, that's all. And I had plenty of young guys and healthy guys, and we brought it up in the elevator, and we put it in the banquet room, and I had a friend who was a florist, and he put flowers and everything around it, and it was a beautiful party and dedicated, and everybody had a lot of fun. But now, where am I gonna do with the statue? Well, my friend at TWS said, bring it to O'Hara. We got a big hanger there, we'll stick it in the corner, and when you're ready to ship it to Florida, we'll do it. This is in August, and I'm thinking, how do I get the statue to Florida? Well, one of my customers was a member of the National Guard in Chicago, and he said, Gabriel, we've got planes flying to Florida all the time because there's that missile crisis in Cuba, and they're empty. We just put it on one of those planes and bring it down to Florida. I said, gee, that's terrific. So we took it from TWA and went over to the National Guard hangar. And there it stood. The crisis was over. The statue was still in the hangar. October, November, December, the statue's still in the hangar at National Guard. It's a winter night in December, and I'm working a banquet in tuxedo, snow outside. I get a call. There's a plane at O'Hara ready to pick up the statue. Well, I had told Florida what we were doing, and they found a Navy plane to come up here to pick it up and take it down to them. So I called Phil, the fellow the National Guard guy. Well, Phil got on the phone, I told him the whole story. He said, but Gabe, I'm with my fiance, and it's snowing outside. I said, we gotta go. So okay. So I called the rest of the guys in the crew, and we all met at the National Guard hangar. We put the statue on the forklift. This is something like a 15-foot crate by 6 feet wide by 4 feet high. You know, it's a monster. And we put it on there so it would balance because the base is heavier than the head. And he picked it up, and it just didn't quite make the door because the hanger on the plane is about 15 feet off the ground and kind of on an angle. So we brought it down and rearranged it. And then when we did that, the weight was shifted. So I looked at Phil, I said, look, you're 200 pounds and I'm 200 pounds. We'll sit at this end of the crate, we'll balance it, and we'll take it up, and then we'll pull it onto the airplane, right? No problem there. So he said, okay, he agreed with me. I don't know why, but he did. And the guy took us up, and he shifted to get it into the door, and just when he did, the crate moved, and the tip of the crate caught inside the door. Otherwise, it would have gone down. And Phil looked at me, he said, you know, Gabriel, we could have crashed. And I said, yeah, but Phil, we would have crashed with Christ, you know. So we pulled it onto the plane, tied it all down, went back on the forklift. The plane took off and went to Florida, and that was that. Not a dime. Everybody was so helpful, and everybody was so involved. And it was just a good bunch of people doing it.
Once the statue was in a warehouse in Florida, Gabe went, hey, you know what? I got it here from Italy. I got it down to Florida. My job's done, right? So he's out of it. So he gets busy with his family restaurant, right? So fast forward to getting him actually certified. I'm driving him home in 2013 from one of our fundraising events. And he says, you know, Jim, I'm going to dive the Christ statue. And I go, well, you brought it here in the 60s. You probably have dove it a bunch of times. And he's like, I've never been on it. I go, you've never been on it? He goes, no, I got busy with the family restaurant. I figured my job was done. I go, wow, who are you diving with? Now, he's a Korean War vet, right? And he's going blind. And he goes, well, I got a buddy, Vinny, who's another Korean War vet who has one leg. And my buddy, Louie, who's also going blind, is another Korean War vet buddy of mine. And I go, well, who's taking you out? What vendor's gonna take you out 8 miles out into the ocean to dive the Christ statue? He goes, well, Louie's got like 25 or 30 foot fishing boat. I go, so 3 guys in their late 70s, all with disabilities, are going out 8 miles into the ocean, and you're gonna die. And I just go, oh my God. I go, wait, let's time out. So I call Rainbow Reef and told him the story, and DJ cleared 8 paid spots on a Saturday to get Gabe and our team on the boat to keep him safe when he would dive the Christ statue for the first time.
One day I'm in my office and Jim Elliott calls me and he says, you're never gonna believe this. I got the guy. They got the statue down to Key Largo, and can you believe this? He's never, ever been diving on it, so he hasn't seen it. They got a couple of guys with a fishing boat or something, and they're gonna go down and see it, and Jim was like, stop right there. I need to make a call. We got to get you on a boat and, out to the statue and not on a fishing boat. We may never see you again. So we set up the trip so that it was just going to be the Diveheart team, some Rainbow Reef people, and we just took one of our boats and headed out to do the dive. And that way Gabe could take his time. We just didn't know exactly how it was going to go because he was sort of an adaptive diver being blind. So we just took our time, headed out there. It was kind of a big deal. The Miami Herald was doing a story on it. Everybody was really tuned in. It was a very cool experience for everyone around. One of those wow moments where you think, wow, there's millions of people that have seen the statue, and then here's the guy that got it here, and it was neat to meet the man that did it.
So we brought him down and put him at the base, and he felt the plaque at the bottom of the statue, and then reached out to the arms and went around back. So he did a whole 360 on the statue, and it was really, really special. There were so many people in the water just kind of tearing up, knowing that this was the man who brought this statue to Key Largo back in the 60s, and this was the first time that he had ever been on it. It was amazing.
So in his 70s, he began to go blind. Kind of hit him hard, so he had to kind of shift his life. And the moment he was able to dive on Christ the Deep for the first time, that was big.
That was probably one of the most exciting moments of his life. I mean, he could not stop talking about it. He had called me up to tell me because he was so excited about the Miami Herald taking his photo and running the story in the paper. And he's like, Nick, I'm kind of a big deal. And I'm like, yes, Dad, you are. You are a big deal. So I think the fact that after all these years, he did receive maybe some recognition for bringing the statue over, it gave him a sense of pride in his later years.
He was in the Army, and he was a master supply sergeant. That's a person that knows how to get everything to everybody. So he was the perfect guy to get the Christ statue here for free from Italy.
So when it came to scuba, my dad kept asking me to get certified so I can go scuba diving with him. I don't live with many regrets, but that's probably one of the regrets is never being able to dive with my dad. So me and my sister, we're making plans together and go dive the statue that my dad helped bring to Florida.
Gabe was able to take fear and turn it into courage and go with Diveheart down to the Christ statue and dive the statue for the first time. Now what we're going to do is bring Mike and Nicole there and commemorate Gabe and the gift that he's given to the world.
Growing up, I always thought my dad was the coolest. He had stories for days. There was never a moment where we weren't talking about some sort of trip or adventure he'd go on. Just know that he lives free.
I've heard so many stories of the adventures. He would just get up and go. If he wanted to do something, he didn't fear anything. He was so courageous about taking off and just trying anything. My father really inspired me to go after my own passions and not be afraid of anything. If there is a dream that you want to pursue, go for it, because you don't want to look back on your life and regret it.
The statue that's in John Pennekamp State Park, whether it's spiritual, whether it's just introspective, it's a monument to pay tribute to those who engage with the sea. It's both symbolic from a spiritual introspective point of view and also from an inspirational point of view.
Everybody's got to work out their own road to adventure and fulfillment. And not everybody's road to fulfillment contains adventure. But if you got a little bit of it in your soul, you got to go for it. Gabe was committed to live every moment and enjoy every moment.
There's always been some thirst for exploration. I think that's pushed humanity across the planet. But then you think about everyday life. Everybody likes a bit of spice in life, and everybody looks for a bit of adventure. How you interpret that, there's a wide spectrum. Being brave, I think, is part of putting it out there a little bit. We went from those two guys over a bottle of Johnny Walker Black to 30 million trained divers today across the planet in all cultures, all countries. It's quite extraordinary. So if you're willing to take that risk, that leap of faith, immersion, diving, snorkeling can invite you to build confidence and comfort, fear to courage, and you can expand that ability. It's actually probably the best kept secret on the planet.
We were happy that we were able to help Gabe imagine the possibilities in his life and help his children imagine the possibilities in theirs in honoring their father. And maybe that ripple effect can inspire you to imagine the possibilities in your life.
Never underestimate the vision of one person. A single idea can truly touch so many lives. Thank you, Gabriel Spataro. Your courage and spirit of adventure has left a legacy to the world.